On this week's episode of the Midlife Mentors podcast, we're joined by the lovely Rosie Green, journalist, author, and relationship expert.
Rosie shares her story of overcoming the breakdown of her marriage and how she managed to rebuild her self-worth and confidence. Rosie has some incredibly practical insights, and we know you're going to love this heartwarming interview full of hope and inspiration.
Hi, I'm James Davis.
And I'm Claire Davis.
We're the Midlife Mentors, here to lift the lid on how to achieve health and happiness.
The balanced, no-nonsense way.
Welcome to another edition of the Midlife Mentors with me, James.
And me, Claire. We are back to the word edition.
I like to keep people on their toes. Episode, edition.
Episode. We've had that for a few months, actually, but now we're back to an edition.
Well, because we've got an exciting edition today.
We have. Rosie, you are being called an edition, which I don't know how you feel about that, but we've got a really, really wonderful podcast for you today. We are speaking to Rosie Green, who's a journalist, author, and relationship expert. We're just going to free flow with this. We said to Rosie, "You okay to free flow with this?" And she was like, "Yeah, that's perfect." So we're just going to free flow with it. But before we go on to that, just kind of thinking what we've been up to, really. A few bits and pieces. We've
run our 4-day challenge. It's been amazing. People are emailing us telling about the results they've got just from following what we told them on that. So that's fantastic.
Brilliant.
Taking a new cohort of clients on, and we're probably just about to head off overseas to run our retreat. So.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about when this is going to go out, actually. Again, completely unprepared, but it'll probably just be just before we run our wonderful retreat back in Punta Romano, 5-star Punta Romano in Marbella.
Can't wait for that.
Can't wait. We haven't run a retreat for about 7 months now.
No.
We've just been in London doing our thing, but we're back in Spain and giving people an absolute treat for their body, mind and soul. Can't wait.
Can't wait for that.
So I'll drop the link if you're interested in that. If this is the right time, I might drop a link and you'll be like, hang on a minute, it's already done. But if we are sending this out just before the retreat, I'll pop a link in the show notes just in case you are interested in learning a little bit more about what we do there and also about our future retreats, because we've got more coming, haven't we?
Yeah, indeed. Right, I think we should get Rosie involved.
Yes.
Rosie, welcome.
Hello, edition.
Hello, edition. Well, I'd like to sign up for that retreat, please. I think that sounds very good.
Oh, bless you. Yeah. Have you been to? Do you know Punta Romano in Marbella?
No, but I'm deeply thinking that sounds right up my strata, as they say.
Oh, stunning resort. Have a little Google of it afterwards.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really beautiful. Like it's all based on like an Andalusian village, but it's all spread out. It's not high rise, and the food is just incredible. We always know when we run a retreat there, which we have done for like 7 years now, that the clients are just going to have the most amazing experience. It's all just sorted for you. And then obviously we do some of the fitness and wellness stuff and then the workshops. But yeah, it's lovely.
God, how amazing. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Right. So Rosie, you are relationship expert now. You kind of transitioned, I guess, fair to say, out of the world of journalism and magazines via a book you wrote kind of about your own experience. So what was your inspiration for writing that book?
Yeah, well, I've always, my sort of long career as a journalist is sort of in the beauty arena. So I've been the beauty editor of Elle and beauty director of Red. So I'd always loved beauty and sort of wellness and things like that. And so that was my main job on the magazines. But I also, when I was at Red, started writing a column about called Life's Rosie. We had very young children, my husband. It was this sort of funny column about how, your kind of car is stuck together with raisins and, sort of things like going to meetings. I remember going to one meeting, like in the height of like the kids being really young. And I'd obviously pulled my trousers and pants off at the same time the night before. And then the morning of the meeting, I'd put on fresh pants because, I'm not terrible. I put on fresh pants with the same trousers, and then like halfway through the meeting I was thinking, like with some like McQueen or something, thinking, what's that at the bottom of my trousers? And it was my knickers, My knickers had like worked their way down. So it's this
Rosie, I am sure I've read that before. Yeah. I'm sure as she was starting to tell that story, I was like, I am sure I've read that before. And I remember I was just like, I love this woman, because that is the sort of thing that actually so many of us probably have done, like take your trousers, still do it, take my trousers off, knickers off, and then, oh, hang on a minute. I did it the other day, actually, with a pair of leggings.
Say, when I'm doing the laundry, I'm always finding your knickers in your leggings.
Oh, we are there. There we are. See? Rosie is incredibly relatable and then wrote about it, which is amazing.
So I wrote about it for about 10 years. And, it was a popular column. And so I did that alongside the beauty stuff. And, I wrote about it because I had this sort of very funny family life. And, I lived this kind of like, magazine-y thing. But I was married, my husband was much kind of, he was much more sort of solid and straight and moralistic and all these sort of things. And, I think from the outside, I think we're always the sort of, the couple that wouldn't split up, and it was all good. And then it was about 4 years ago now, I just sort of got the sense that something was wrong. And actually a year before that, I'd written a piece for Red called The Menopause. And I just sort of noticed that my husband was getting grumpier and crosser and all these things. And I interviewed this guy, and I'm really bad, I can't remember what his name is. And he said to me, just, I was being all lighthearted about it. He said, just be a bit careful. He said, because quite often, men who haven't done a lot of work or, aren't emotionally, they're not, they don't give out a lot emotionally. They'd rather get a new contract than rewrite the new one. And I was like, oh God, okay. And I remember going out to him and saying, are you unhappy? Do we need to talk about this? And he was like, no. But then about maybe 6 months after that, I thought everything was fine, but I was, I could sense there was a bit of unhappiness, but we weren't arguing. There was nothing sort of giving me major pointers. And I just walked past his phone, and in those days, I don't know what you guys are like, but our phones were they're actually linked weirdly. I didn't ever do that, but they were just linked. And so all our contacts were shared, and we didn't have any kind of privacy settings or any of those sort of things. So I walked past, and there was just a message on his phone, like, sitting there, from a female colleague that just felt a bit wrong, And so I asked him about that, and he said, oh no, don't worry about that. And then there was like a series of events that was, that were very out of character for him, like not coming home, drinking more, like if you Google, as I did, signs of infidelity, it was like
to Google.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like a checkbox list, checkbox list or whatever. And then anyway, eventually he got the burner phone and blah, blah, and I found these messages, and I was so shocked, I think, because I just hadn't seen it coming at all. So I think there was just so much, I was shocked. My body went into sort of crisis mode. I think I felt like life could throw anything at me except this. This would be my one, the one constant that I felt like I needed. And so from then there was about sort of 6 months of, him, will he stay, won't he stay? Is he with this woman? Is he not with this woman? So many kind of untruths and so many grayness and so much stuff on both of our behalves. It was just a hideous time. And when he finally was about to go, I remember at the same time, my job, I'd switched from Red to another woman's magazine, and then that had closed. And so I realized that I had no husband and no job at this point. And I remember ringing the Red editor, it's an amazing woman called Sarah Tomchek, and saying, can I come and see you? And I just told her everything. She was so horrified and upset. And she just said, well, you can come back and you can write for us. And do you think you would want to write about it? She said, no pressure, you can write about lipsticks if you want, And I said, actually, I think I would. And I took the kids on holiday to see some friends of ours, and I wrote this piece on the plane, which was just like my experience. And it came out in Red, and the response was unbelievable. So there were all these people who'd read it, read the column and just were invested in that. And then there were all these women who'd had similar experiences, or who had been through the experience with the other side. And it just really touched people. And so from there, you know, lots of people were asking me to write more about it, but also sort of amass this sort of following of women who were in similar situations. And then this amazing community became of all these women that were helping the other women, saying, you'll get through this and do that. So I feel like talking about being left, or talking about someone cheating on you, or talking about all those things, as a society, we kind of push it down. And then, you know, like I always think of it as sort of like the rule, you know, the most people seem to most respect the kind of, you know, that sort of super elegant Kate Middleton, never complain, never explain type thing. And also your ego doesn't want you to talk about being left or dumped, because, you know, you want to say, oh yeah, it was a mutual decision, blah, blah, blah. I thought I owe it to these people, and I owe it to myself to tell the truth. And so that's where this sort of relationship expert comes from. I sometimes feel a bit like a fraud, because I'm like, it's not like I've done a degree in relationship counselling. It's just by dint of my own going wrong. But I did so much research for the book that that actually I feel I've got such a better insight now.
And I also think sometimes we can feel like that, right? All of us have a level of that imposter syndrome in us, you know, but actually it's our own personal experience that really draws people to us. It's that empathy and knowing what those people, that's what people want. It's that understanding and feeling like they're not going through it alone. So you just mentioned your book there. So you were doing you're obviously writing for Red, and then the book followed. Just tell us a little bit about that and what happened.
How to heal a broken heart, right?
How to heal a broken heart.
Well, I just felt that I was very lucky in that if I ever something through, you know, if ever life threw something at me, like, you know, from a very minor level, like, how do I get rid of my hairy legs, to a much bigger thing of like, how do I heal my heart? I'd write a piece about it. So I realized that I had access to a lot of amazing people that you know, so many people without that job, or without the sort of financial support would not have. And so I thought, I just want to write a book that, and my sort of publisher described it as a part manual, part memoir. So it was my experience, but it was also how to get through it. So it was showing the kind of way that our brain behaves in a breakup situation, because it sort of sabotages you weirdly. It's like there was a chap saying, Guy Winch says, you know, you're drawn to your ex like a sort of addict that is crack. There's the same, you know, you're kind of constantly trying to get a hit of them, even if it's a negative hit. And all that stuff helped me understand my behavior so much that I thought, if I can help others get through that, then that's what I'd really like to do. So it's a sort of step by step of the different stages, and obviously it covers most breakups, but there's a particular kind of breakup that is often the other person cheating, and then that means that you're in this situation of kind of uncertainty and real, you know, it really crushes your self-belief, and then you try to understand why they're behaving in a way that they're not used to behaving. You know, it's like, my ex is a good man. I think he just had, you know, it was all those emotions that were causing, he had to detach, and he had to behave in a certain way to justify to himself what he was doing, I think.
Yeah. And it's so interesting, isn't it? You're saying about him going through, well, now we know it's actually called an andropause. You know, men go through hormonal changes. They go through, and I hate this term, but at the end of the day, it's kind of what it feels like. It's that midlife crisis, or, you know, albeit whatever time it is in your life, we can go through that at any time. I think I went through mine quite early, actually. I hope I'm not going to have another one. But, you know, actually, there's not much spoken about men going through those really, really difficult times. And at the same time, they don't have, like us women, they don't necessarily have that support network to really speak about what's going on for them, and saying, you know, I'm feeling this, I'm not feeling this. My libido's gone, I've got no energy. You know, I'm piling on the weight, that's making me feel crap about myself. All of that stuff, guys don't have that to talk about, so they bottle it up and then detach.
Yes, and I think that's what's so interesting, isn't it? I think you're absolutely accurate on all of those points. And then I think that sort of self-awareness of for me, it's still quite hard to believe that that's the way the brain works, but it's such a pattern. It's such a pattern that there's anger and coldness and contempt, because you would think, okay, I live with this, I've loved this person for 20 years, actually I'm going to leave and, go somewhere else, but I'm going to be kind and calm and all those things. But I think, the kind of, doing that stuff against your own moral code makes you behave in a certain way. And I think you're right. And now I look at it and I, having had relationships after this and like, I can see that, oh my God, you get to midlife and then you have all those emotions, like the sort of the sex and the, the dopamine and all those things that are kind of pulling you in. I can see why it'd be irresistible.
Yeah, and then there's that element of, and this goes for men and women, it's that whole feeling of, oh my goodness, is this what my life is?
Yes.
And we all feel like that, it's like, is this, I'm living this life, is this the life, I know this is the life I've been working towards, but is this the life I actually want going forward? And it's a massive identity crisis.
Yes.
A lot of people. So and you kind of mentioned there some of the strategies that you might have had in the book, and I know when we met, so we've met not in person yet, we're going to
virtually, but we're getting to meet this weekend.
Yay, can't wait to meet you in person at an event. But when we did a workshop together online, we were talking about wellness and prioritizing your health and wellness, and the fact that it goes to the bottom of the pile. And you said, your body went into shock, and for when we went through our divorces, that's my body like completely went to pot. But we talked about wellness on that, and the fact that we do need to prioritize and take our power back by actually bit by bit starting to look after ourselves a little bit more. Can you just talk a little bit, because I know when we met on that online workshop, you were like, yeah, I get it. So was that some of the strategies that you use, looking after yourself, health, wellness, to kind of get your power back? Is that in your book as well?
Yeah, it is. And I think, wellness is it's quite interesting, because even like 10-15 years ago, wellness was woo-woo, right? It's like, it's amazing that actually we, I remember a sort of old colleague, Sue Harmsworth, who's this amazing woman who set up S-Spa, the brand, she would talk about wellness. Yes. And for sort of, most people in the street, it would be kind of, like kind of super spiritual and crazy, and but actually, I think the survival instinct in me just knew that I needed to move forward. And I knew that if I started drinking or overeating or doing any of those negative crutch things, then I couldn't, I wouldn't be going forward. And I wanted to feel like I was at the very bottom. And so everything I was doing was sort of creative. And I also learned, weirdly, like we all know, if you go out and drink too much, you don't feel so good with the hangover and stuff. But I also learned that, there were things that I, like if I'd had too much caffeine, it would make me all even jitterier, or if I hadn't eaten, then that would make me more anxious. And so I learned so much about my body actually in that time. And I learned that sort of having that regularity of working out and running just really gave me something, to focus on, and literally one foot in front of the other,
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because although when we go through a breakup, it is so traumatic, but at the same time, we do get this sense of once we come through the trauma part, a sense of rediscovery. I like to say it's almost like, well, I am at rock bottom now. That's certainly how I felt. Like, how do I build myself back up? But not only how do I do it, who do I want to be when I build myself back up as well? And it's almost like empowering and refreshing to actually go, oh, I've got choices here that I didn't have before.
Yes, I agree. I think it's almost like it's that sort of post breakup. There was a really brilliant piece about that. It's a sort of very powerful time, isn't it? And I think it's especially powerful if you look at yourself and you can sort of, if you bury it and you go, oh, he's a bastard or she's a bitch or all of this sort of stuff, and you just, that I feel you can get stuck in that zone forever. But you're right. I feel that if you can focus on yourself and decide that who that person is going to be, the new person that you're building up, then that's just brilliant. I mean, I think, on a much more superficial level, I kind of didn't want to be seen to be sinking as well. I wanted to strive and do well, but actually, the real thing is about yourself, isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think sometimes you kind of touched on that with with one of the words I can't remember, it was like that routine. It's also, there's some, we don't feel safe basically when we're going through that breakup. We don't feel safe. We feel very untethered, and everything in our life is in complete disarray, even our thoughts. And I think sometimes the only way that we can feel safe and anchored is to have a little bit of routine. And I think sometimes you don't even know what that looks like. So just getting your butt moving and just getting it to the gym is like, oh my goodness, I've achieved something. I've got out of my pajamas. I've wiped my snotty nose. I've actually pulled my greasy hair back. I haven't washed it yet, but I've pulled my greasy hair back, and I've actually got my ass to the gym, you know. And that's actually why I got into what I do. You know, I didn't start doing this till just under 10 years ago, and it was through my divorce and being put on antidepressants and letting my body go completely to pot and putting on weight and drinking too much. And it was the only constant was going to the gym. I wasn't a gym bunny before that. It was my only constant. And I was like, oh my God, I'm getting my power back. I've got my mojo back. I'm, you know, hang on a minute. You know, I've done that. I've achieved that. And that for me was why I started getting into it, and then bringing all the other coaching stuff into it, was because it helped me enormously. It helped with, you know, the endorphins, the good feel good hormones. I was able to come off the antidepressants. I was like, that's, you know. So yeah, I think it's a really, really important part that can really, really slide for lots of people. And it's understandable because you're not taking care of yourself. But if you can get that back.
But it builds, doesn't it? Exactly as you say, you get yourself to the gym, and then the endorphins flow, and then you meet people, you know, like chatting to you both, you meet sort of people who have a similar focus and a similar goal, and actually it all kind of adds, it all just adds and makes you grow and grow and grow, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then you start washing your hair.
And then you think, oh, I've got a line on my arm that I didn't have before.
Yes. Hang on a minute, my butt's a little bit pert up.
Exactly. Oh my God, it really does work, this shizzle.
I know. So if you've got any other, I kind of don't need you to go through all of them, but if you've got any other kind of strategies that really stood out from your book and the stuff that really worked for you, have you got kind of any tips for people that are going through that kind of initial stages of heartbreak right now? Are there any things that come to mind?
Well, I would say share it in terms of, I mean, you have to be careful who you share it with, but I do think you know, as human beings, we kind of need to process stuff. So actually by talking it through, you know, you're actually, each time you do that, you're kind of coming to maybe a more sensible conclusion, or you're kind of, you know, you're bringing it out into the light. And I think, you know, Sarah Davison, our mutual friend, she talks a lot about sort of not retelling your sad story again and again and again, which I totally get. And so I think it's about, you know, working out who you talk to, making sure they're a positive influence, and just, you know, actually surrounding yourself with people that will help you and lift you up and move you forward. Also, a really good friend of mine just said, be kind to yourself. And I used to remember that every time I sort of started berating myself or thinking, this is my fault and this is this, and, you know, and actually I would just buy a magazine and read it in the bath, or I'd watch some terrible telly, or I'd just get myself through those horrible moments. You know, you just think, actually, I've just got to get through the next half an hour. And then there'd be other stuff like, you know, more practical stuff like social media, like don't stalk, don't do any of that. I mean, it's easier said than done, but actually that it just feeds that addiction. So you're just keeping that attachment, be it a positive or a negative attachment. You know, this is obviously negative. You know, even though you're looking at them, you're still getting that hit of them, and it just stops you detaching, I think, because that's ultimately where you want to get to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so powerful, isn't it? Because social media,
media is so easy now to keep tabs on people, but not healthy at all.
Well, it's got even worse. So, I mean, my split was nearly, I can't even remember that, 9 years ago or something like that. And actually, you think about how much social media has changed even since then. You know, it was, I think Instagram didn't come around for a couple of years after, and it wasn't, I think to myself now, how would I cope with it all over social media? And I did see it on Facebook a little bit, and you try not to, but I remember being there, and the feeling I used to get was just such trauma. So we have to take responsibility to a degree, and it is hard because we're wanting that dopamine hit, right?
Yes.
We're wanting the feel good hormones to feel better, to not feel so angry and not feel so lonely.
It's like eating a takeaway, isn't it? It feels good in like the 1 second moment, and then it's like, oh,
first few mouthfuls, you're like, this is what I've been waiting for, and then you're like, not really enjoying it afterwards. You're like, I really wish I hadn't done that now.
And it's like we're responsible, and that's a hard pill to swallow, but you know, we're responsible for what we're seeing in our feed, and if we can just cut off that time, delete.
Yeah, 100%. I think that is, you know, that's one of the most. I remember my dad taking me for thing, and he was just like, you just have to detach, and I was like, oh, easier said than done. You know, I was like, where is he? What's he doing? But you know, it was just all about him. But that massive moment when it can be about you, and that's where I think the wellness comes in, because then you're rebuilding yourself. You know, you're kind of, and you know, setting yourself goals and challenges. And I do, you know, I know that retreats like the ones you run will be out of reach for some people, but I just think actually that kind of thing is so beneficial. You know, don't buy the handbag, go on the retreat, you know.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, when I've been through breakups before,
retail therapy,
well,
again, it's short-lived, right?
Yeah.
People look for those external things. Oh, I'll go and buy that thing, it'll make me happy, and it's like a fleeting moment, and then you're still left with your feelings.
Retreats, I mean, I was a retreat junkie in my like 20s and into my early 30s, and then obviously started running them. But I think that it's just good to reconnect with yourself in a safe environment. We do have lots of women. I say a majority of the people that do come on our retreats are women. I'd say like 90% of them, and I'd say a lot of them are solo travelers as well, that might have just come out of a relationship, and having that safe environment where you can reconnect with yourself and learn a little bit and process what's been going on. I think it's really powerful.
And also, how brilliant is that? Because I mean, you've obviously been doing it for a while, but I think, you know, for a long time it was sort of socially unacceptable to go on holiday by yourself, wasn't it? And so I actually think, you know, I've got a friend who's been single for, you know, 20 years or so, and she would always hate holidays, whereas now she goes off on a yoga retreat and she goes off and does that, and I just think, brilliant. You know, actually that really, I mean, I went on just overnight on Sarah Davison's divorce retreat, and I have to say it did take everything that I had, because it was raining and it was thing, and I just thought, oh my god, it's like a sort of weird sitcom, you know, there are 20 dumped people in a room, you know, like how is this gonna fly? And random, like Tom Cruise was somewhere in the building. That was just so funny. And you know, I won't lie, it was quite hard, you know, because you have to look at yourself, you have to look at, you know, you have to hear some harsh truths, but also, you know, you learn all these strategies. So I think they've got a really massive place, actually.
Yeah,
definitely. It's something I want to ask, actually, like the way you tackled it is incredibly brave. Like you were speaking earlier about kind of facing it head on, right, and being very vulnerable, and kind of, so we've all been there. I've been there. You know, your ego doesn't admit that they're the ones that left you and all the rest of it. But actually, when you are vulnerable and open up to that, and I was actually speaking to the guys out there as well, like vulnerability is a superpower, because you're unveiling another side of yourself. And I don't know if you'd agree, Rosie, unless you can actually start to be vulnerable and look at your role without tipping into victimhood, you're never going to move forward. And I think this is where a lot of people fall down. I've certainly seen it with people. You know, a relationship ends, so they're literally like, oh, it wasn't my fault, nothing to do with me. They were the narcissist. Right, I'm on to the next one. So you see the pattern, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And it's like, well, actually, stop for a moment. Maybe do that work on yourself. You know, be vulnerable, be prepared to be vulnerable, own up to your part in this. And from there, you can grow and make the changes.
Yeah, and see what energy you're sending out as well. Because I'm not saying ever that the way that anyone is treated, you know, if it's bad, is acceptable. But it's also kind of like, what energy do I want to take out into the world now as this version of myself, so that I don't attract another narcissist. Yeah. So that I don't, you know, and the energy is everything, you know.
Energy is everything. And I say that to people, and you know, they'll talk to me about dating apps and things, and I know dating apps are really hard, don't get me wrong. I know there's great things, because quite frankly, you know, we'd all be single if they didn't exist, but I know that it's really hard and it's really brutal. And you know, a lot of people will say, well, you know, I don't look great in my pictures, or I don't do this, and honestly, I believe more and more it is about the energy that you put out, how confident you are, and you know, to your point about vulnerability, I just think that, you know, actually it's funny what you think is the power, isn't it? Like when I was first dating, I would think, okay, well, I'll just be like, you know, message me if you like, don't message me if you don't, I'm just breezy and I don't mind. And then I realized that actually the power was saying, well, actually, I would like a boyfriend. I'd like a boyfriend that, you know, wants to be in a relationship and wants to do this. So actually, you can message me or you can not message me, but I'm not going to be, you know, I'm not going to fake it. This is, you know, and actually that's the power, isn't it? As well. No.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's standing in your own power. I'll use that again. It's standing in your own power and your own worth. But actually to be honest with yourself and authentic and to say, I would like this person in my life. And the energy I'm putting out there is of this person, because this is the person I am. And then if they're aligned with that, great. If they're not, I'm not going to be affected by it. And
that sort of, that ability to protect your ego in that way, because I think we are all sort of programmed socially to look for that primary attachment, you know, and I find it so interesting now. It's like people will invite me for dinner and they'll invite my boyfriend, and I think, well, that's great, but part of me thinks, well, you know, he's getting invited, why is my best friend not getting invited? I know that sounds really weird, but it's like, or you know, or I'll, you know, I might have a hospital appointment and I'll say, oh, is he picking you up for that? Which, I mean, he will, you know, he will, but it's funny how that is the relationship that takes precedence, and society does that, doesn't it?
And also when we are single, it gives us an opportunity to really see that clearly.
Yes, it's very interesting. And I think, you know, I don't know if we'll ever change that, but it's, for me, it's about making sure that my self-worth is never reliant on somebody else choosing me again, you know.
Hurrah to that.
Of course I'll be sad, I'll be really sad if it went wrong, but I hope I'll be better at not thinking that's a massive failing of myself, you know.
That is so true, and that only comes with going through it and coming out the other side of it, actually. Right, my lovely. Is there anything else you think is important to share with anyone? You know, like any few little pearls of wisdom?
Oh my God, I feel like I'm trying to think what my pearls of wisdom would be. Right, now I've got totally.
That's all right. Or what's next for Rosie?
Well, you've given loads of pearls of wisdom. To be fair, you just landed on one beautiful one to finish.
Thank you.
Bless you. Yeah, what's next for Rosie?
Well, I think I'd like to sort of continue in the same vein, and sort of, you know, I keep thinking that I'd like to sort of help people in their relationships, but, you know, maybe not another book, but maybe more sort of social media that people can sort of access, and they can access tips and, you know, sort of self-belief. You know, I was saying to you that I loved your statement about, you know, borrowing some self-belief when you didn't feel brilliant. And I think actually, you know, social media is maligned for so many things, and it you know, it can be negative in terms of stalking your ex, but actually if you can see things in the morning that just kind of keep you going and keep you on track, you know, so in terms of wellness, in terms of mental health, in terms of sort of dating, I feel like that's what I'd like to do, sort of just something that kind of incorporates all those things.
I love that.
Very inspiring.
You know, like community, we're running a 4-day mini course at the moment, all around like hormones and metabolism, and people are like, oh my God, I feel so motivated. I'm like, that's the power of community, accountability and focus, you know, and that's often the missing secret sauce to our success. It's having those people that have got your back, and like you said, it's having those positive vibes from like-minded people. It's really powerful. So I wish you all the best of luck with that. That would be amazing.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I've got to actually do it now.
Where will you find the time?
Exactly. But I'll come on your retreat and get some Zen.
Oh, we'd love, Rosie, we'd love you on that. That would be absolutely amazing. So how can people find out a little bit more about you if they want to find out about the book or the articles you write? You've got a website, haven't you? Do you want to just share that?
Yeah, I've got a website which is called Life's Rosie. I didn't really think that wasn't very clever when I said that, because nobody can ever spell it. Like, it sounded a bit weird, but it's basically Life's Lifes Rosie, and my Instagram is of the same name. So I think those two are probably the best places to find it.
I love your Instagram. We'll
put those links in the show notes.
Yes,
as well,
we'll put those in the show notes. But Rosie, we can't wait to see you. This will be out by the time
in a couple of days.
We'll see you in a couple of days. We can meet you in person, and we're just so grateful for you spending the time with us today, doing this podcast.
Your story is really, really inspiring, and I'm sure it's going to help other people that hear it. So thank you for sharing.
And you're a beautiful soul inside and out.
Oh, well, thank you. And I feel very lucky to have met you both. So honestly, it's a win-win.
Oh, bless you. Thanks so much, Rosie. Lots of love.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Midlife Mentors with Claire and James Davis.
We'd love to hear from you, so drop us a line at info@themidlifementors.com with any questions or topic suggestions.
And make sure you join us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can find us under the Midlife Mentors.
Yeah.